Dragon Age Inquisition was rated M for mature by the ESRB and contains blood, intense violence, nudity, sexual content, and strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, my name is Amaronith and I play games for the internet, and today we're playing Dragon Age Inquisition. It's been a few episodes, and so it is now time for yet another Codex Entry reading. I got a new setup, so it should make things a little easier to double check if I've read them before. Now it is a lot easier for me to just pull up my notes and not have the game freak out. So, we begin with characters. Blackwall. I do not have much on Warden Blackwall. We know he became Constable of the Grey in Valshavon after Warden Constable Fontaine assumed the position of Commander of the Grey from her predecessor. He also bears the Silverite Wings of Valor, an honor bestowed upon Orlesian Wardens for deeds of great daring. The details of the act for which Blackwall earned the Silverite Wings, however, are sketchy. Grey Wardens hide their secrets well. The medal was likely awarded for a campaign to secure deep roads entrances within Orlais, shortly after the Fifth Blight. Several Grey Wardens lost their lives on that campaign. Perhaps more would be dead if not for Blackwall. According to my sources, Warden Blackwall has been traveling alone for several years now. The last anyone saw him at the keep in Valshavon, it was 937, Dragon. It has been completely abandoned along with all other Warden outposts. I believe Blackwall is as curious about this disappearance as we are. Perhaps in time we will find answers. Leliana. Iron Bull. M, my dear friend, I completely understand the difficulty you face. To have such well-equipped bandits attack your family's caravans so regularly, and with such exquisite knowledge of your shipping schedules, is indeed highly unfortunate. There is no shame at all in finding your household guards wanting in such trying circumstances. To answer your question, when faced with my own troubles last year, I employed the Bull's Chargers. Their leader, the Iron Bull, is a Qunari, a great horned giant of a man. He looked like a savage, but spoke like a gentleman. He seems unstoppable in combat, but is far more clever than a simple swordsman. His mercenaries were costly, but they were both strong enough to protect my family's caravans, and clever enough to discover how the bandits came into such luck in their attacks upon my family. The bandits have been no trouble at all since, and a baron of our mutual acquaintance effusively assured me that he would be greatly surprised if they ever again caused us difficulty. If you wish to employ the Iron Bull, I can provide you with his contact information, as well as a list of the liquors he enjoys most particularly. Will your husband also be present in these negotiations, or will you be making the acquaintance of the Iron Bull in a more intimate setting? If so, we shall have to talk the next time our men go hunting. Yours in friendship, B. A letter lifted from a hidden drawer in a noblewoman's vanity and copied carefully before being returned. Oh my. Ooh. An update on Sera. Sera. This report by Josephine has been defaced numerous times in a different hand. On Sera, Red Jenny, and Velissima Lady Parts von Knucklefronts. It falls to me to comment on this Red Jenny, for as a creature of the court I must have seen the effect of her actions, although I cannot be certain. Does that make them effective or ineffective? What I know is that she has vexed city's guardsmen across Thedas, and always escaped. Accessing all available records, it seems clear that there have been multiple embodiments of the name, often at the same time. The limitations of communication are such that this is impossible to verify in the moment. A crude drawing of a guard with her breeches at her ankles. The severity of the attributed actions vary wildly, from petty to outright vicious. While official reports label these actions unfair, I have knowledge of many named as victims, and several are of suspect character. Sera would call them something altogether untoward. Yes, mums, shit's the lot of 'em. There are tales of Red Jenny targeting criminals, slavers, and even assassins' guilds. The benefit of having a local is that they are invested in regional concerns, although this obviously varies. I can discern no protocol. Don't need a title to be awful and deserve it. So who is our Red Jenny? She has been amusing herself in Val-Royeaux for some time, although it is clear from her accent that she is deeply Fereldan. She met with outright laughter at my inquiry as to whether she had any special elven concerns that I could address. I have confirmed with Liliana about the dangers of this group, and our estimation is that this incarnation of Red Jenny is at least a good distraction. Aw, the scary one cares. Addendum, Denerim. Sera's claim to have lived in Denerim cannot be verified, but seems likely. The alienage there was neither stable nor secure. Many residents of the cities fled the region following the Blight. Given her nature, Val-Royeaux would have seemed rife with targets. Denerim has more than its share of suspect nobility, but most were rallied against a common enemy thanks to the efforts of the hero of Fereldan. Forced to, more like. Shits and double shits. Nothing new there. No. Creatures. Bruiser. A warrior wielding a great blade strikes terror into the common soldiers, but to a chevalier he is no greater danger than any other opponent. A skilled warrior is struck down by a maul or battle axe in one of 3 cases. In the first, he is taken unawares in the heat of battle. In the second, he cannot evade the blow because of the nature of the battlefield or his own injuries. And in the third and most common case, he is struck down because he reacts poorly. We do not train enough against two-handed weapons because we disdain them ourselves. I think this is a mistake, and in time to come I hope it is corrected. I have seen too many skilled warriors die because they see a great maul coming down at them, and raise a shield to block instead of deflect. I have seen men lose their composure due to fear or anger and engage such a warrior directly, thinking they can risk a blow to their body as they would from a light sword or a dagger. In the heat of battle, even the trained mind will think such things. Those who cannot overcome such thoughts die. You must watch the weapon, but only to gauge its length. Otherwise, as in all fights, the opponent's hips and shoulders will tell his intent. The great weapons are dangerous only when moving or poised overhead to strike down. You must give ground, but only against the true threat. If he advances but is not truly prepared to strike, you must rush in, cut him, and withdraw to your guard before his blow is ready. It may take 10 cuts to kill him. Even after the 9th, he may cleave your head from your body if you do not respect the distance he can cover. If using such a weapon yourself, mark your distance and do not allow yourself to react to an opponent outside your reach. You cannot recover your guard as quickly as you can with a sword and shield. Keep your weapon moving and measure your blows. A stuttered step on your strike can fool many opponents into thinking you out of range, and then rushing their defense. In this manner you may kill most who stand against you. Fighting in such a manner you may feel more like a butcher than a hero, but the living may console themselves while the dead cannot. An excerpt from A Meditation upon the Use of Blades by Swordsmaster Marche de Jeanmain, required reading at the Académie des Chevaliers. Corpse. In most corners of Thedas, funeral rites include burning or dismembering the dead to prevent them from becoming host to demons. But not everyone gets a proper burial. It is not unheard of for the dead to be thrown in mass graves, and the aftermath of a battle or execution, almost asking some demon to come claim the corpses. From Beyond the Veil, Spirits and Demons by Enchanter Mère. Deepstalker. One of the few natural non-darkspawn creatures to live in the deep roads, the Deepstalker is a reptilian cave dweller known for burrowing into the stone paths of the deep roads and ambushing prey, usually nugs. They hunt in packs, attacking with round mouths of serrated teeth or spitting poison from venom glands. Although a single Deepstalker poses little threat to any experienced explorers, packs can be lethal. From Tales from Beneath the Earth by Brother Denativi. Dragonling. Newly hatched dragons are roughly the size of a deer and ferociously hungry. They live for a short time in their mother's lair before venturing out on their own. The slender, wingless creatures are born in vast numbers, as only a few survive to adulthood. Giant. 938 Dragon, 4th Harvest Mère, continued musings on giants. I assume they encroach due to disruption of their environs. Perhaps clawing darkspawn rerouted underground waters, altering the landscape of their prey. Food is seemingly their only motivator, and I have observed them eating meat, grains, leaves, nearly anything digestible, with no care or joy for taste or texture. So complete is their scavenging that troll might be a more academically accurate term, but I cannot blame farming folk for imposing an obvious descriptive. Yet, are these giants merely beasts of destructive instinct? I followed one specimen from the north, where they are somewhat more common, to winter breeding grounds, warmth of seasons, corruption of silent plains. It followed waterways, preferring to float its bulk, but never did I see any sense in its eye, and never did it appear to plan beyond its immediate surroundings. But I remain intrigued, for they have hands, and that means the potential to raise them in praise. Throughout creation, upright beings with hands have been a sign of greater purpose. What lesson, Maker, in these strange children? I will approach tomorrow in your name. Excerpt annotated below in a different hand. Last entry in the letters of Brother Estemer. His only recovered possession, likely because they were already flat. This archivist's recommendation remind the neophytes that the tale of Sister Dariel in the Wolf's Den is a metaphor. Giant spider. Maybe it's meant to be that size, and the regular ones are miniatures. I mean, a just-in-caring maker would create them big to start, then they can't hide. That's what bothers you, isn't it? The hiding? A big one like that, a good 12-footer, sure, it's all fang and such, but you know where it is. Dark places where the veil is weak. You're never surprised by a giant one, because you had to go to their house. They're not on your face at night or in your boot in the morning. And if their web is as thick as rigging, you don't have to worry about the hair on your neck, or the baby ones in the breeze. You hate that, right? Hitting a cloud of them while you're writing? Could be a dozen, but you only see one, and you try to smash it, but when you look, the thing is gone, and now your arm itches right up to the shoulder, and that hair feels like it's back, but you can't unbuckle your helm because of the gauntlets, and now the hair in your ear is tingly. That's just the worst, isn't it? Records of the Redcliffe Guard, 14 Guardian 939. Witness the recounting of provocation and resulting brawl. No jailings. Victim was being an arse. Shade. It has often been suggested that the only way for a demon to affect the world of the living is by possessing a living or once living body, but this is not always true. Indeed, a shade is one such creature, a demon in its true form that has adapted to affect the world around it. My hypothesis is this. We already know that many demons become confused when they pass through the veil into our world. They are unable to tell the living from the dead, the very static nature of our universe being confusing to a creature that is accustomed to a physicality defined entirely by emotion and memory. Most demons seek to seize immediately upon anything they perceive as life, jealously attempting to possess it. But what of those that do not? What of those that encounter no life or fail to possess a body? What of those that are more cautious by their nature? These demons watch. They lurk. They envy. In time, such a demon will learn to drain energy from the psyche of those it encounters, just as it did in the Fade. Once it has drained enough, it has the power to manifest and will forever be known as a shade. Such a creature spurns possession. It instead floats as a shadow across its piece of land, preying upon the psyche of any who cross its path. Perhaps it believes itself still in the Fade? There is evidence to believe this is so. Researched, demons against demons increased. Groups. Ben-Hassrath Reeducators. Detainee has already confessed to resisting arrest when Ben-Hassrath came for his co-worker. Circumstantial evidence suggests he was part of group planning to become Talvashoth. Co-worker died attempting to escape. Detainee requires evaluation for possible reintroduction into society instead of Kamek treatment. He is being denied sleep and given restricted portions of food and water, as noted below. Day 1. Detainee restrained, given water but no food. Detainee requested to use latrine, was told cleanliness part of the Qun, and he had decided to attack the Qun. Detainee asked why he murdered Ben-Hassrath, responded that he had only defended himself. Detainee eventually urinated on the floor. Day 2. Detainee given light food and water, told he could use latrine if he could demonstrate ability to follow the Qun. Detainee asked why he murdered Ben-Hassrath, answered that he fought them to protect co-worker, did not murder them. Detainee told that lying is unacceptable under the Qun. Detainee observed Reeducators eating and drinking and engaging in conversation about daily activities while Detainee stood. Day 3. Detainee refused food and water, was taken outside and showed Kalaba, rooting through garbage for food. Detainee told he is similar to Kalaba, as neither he nor it follows the Qun. Also told Kalaba is better than Detainee, as Kalaba is too stupid to follow the Qun, while Detainee could follow it but made conscious choice to refuse. Detainee asked why he murdered Ben-Hassrath. Detainee answered that he was angry and trying to protect his friend. Day 4. Detainee shown drawings of dead Tamassrans and children, told these were drawings of people in Seheron killed by Talvashoth. Detainee told all Talvashoth do this, and if Detainee wishes to be Talvashoth, he must go to Education Center and kill Tamassrans now. Detainee became visibly upset. Detainee asked why he murdered Ben-Hassrath, answered that he was wrong and lied to by his co-worker. Day 5. Detainee continues to show remorse, is visibly happy when reminded that Qun offers place for all people. Detainee washed, given new clothes and food, allowed to sleep. Upon waking, Detainee asked whether he would prefer to be Talvashoth or Qunari. Detainee answered that he will remain Qunari. Detainee released to road crew for simple labor, and will be watched by observers on team. Excerpt from a Ben-Hassrath Reeducation report smuggled out of Parvolin. Big Brother is watching. Qunari Tamassrans. Nanny Goodwin lay on the hard stones of the Kirkwall docks until the sailors left with her purse. As she struggled to her feet, a large grey hand reached down to help her. It was one of the Qunari, the great horned giants who had come to live in the city. "I thank you," said Nanny Goodwin hesitantly, looking for her satchel. "I did not know the docks were so dangerous, or I would have asked one of Lord G's guards to accompany me as I brought healing herbs for the children." "You are a Tamassran," said the Qunari. "Under the Qun no sailor would accost you. Why are you here?" "I am but Lord G's nanny," Nanny Goodwin said, "and Lord G did not believe me when I told him that the children needed healing herbs, so I was forced to buy them myself." "Under the Qun," said the Qunari, "Tamassrans are trusted and listened to when caring for the children, and any healing herbs they needed would be provided. Why did Lord G not attend to your words?" "He is a noble," Nanny Goodwin said, "and I am merely a servant who cares for his children." She shifted her shawl to hide the bruises the sailors had given her, as well as the bruises Lord G himself had left. "Under the Qun," said the Qunari, "all are equal, and no Tamassran thinks herself a mere anything." Nanny Goodwin bid the Qunari good day and returned to Hightown with much to think about. An excerpt from The Lives of the Nobles, The Truth of the Qun, author unknown. Qunari, Ben-Hassrath. Suggesting that all Ben-Hassrath are spies is like assuming that all craftsmen are carpenters. The Ben-Hassrath form a significant portion of the Qunari priesthood, tending to a variety of tasks within Qunari society. In Qunari cities, Ben-Hassrath serve as something akin to a town guard, investigating anything that disrupts the orderly function of the city. Ben-Hassrath Reeducators treat criminals and rebels against the Qun, determining whether they must destroy the subject's mind using a poison known as Kamek. Those they can rehabilitate through treatment and education are later transferred to simple work details. In contested or war-ridden areas, Ben-Hassrath coordinate with the Qunari military to track the dreaded Talvashoth rebels, a function similar to bounty hunting. Outside Qunari borders, Ben-Hassrath agents primarily observe and report. While this may seem underhanded, it is no more than most nations do with their own spies, and the Qunari are, perhaps rightly, in retrospect, extremely concerned with the danger our culture's comparatively liberated mages pose. Our assumption that all Ben-Hassrath are malicious spies bent on bringing Orlais into the Qun has no basis in fact. It is simple prejudice against a race whose appearance unsettles us, compounded by a guilty conscience at seeing how many peasants, especially elves, prefer life under the Qun to life under our empress. The Qunari are a society of people with a different culture and different values, but people nonetheless. Nevertheless, as complex and nuanced as Orlais. An excerpt from The Lion and the Bull, Racial Bias and Oversimplification of Qunari Societal Roles in the Orlesian Court, author unknown, published by the University of Orlais. The Grey Wardens. The blight had ravaged the land for months. The armies of the great kings amassed for one last stand. As the sun burst through the clouds that boiled and churned in the dark sky, it illuminated a vast, seething horde of darkspawn with the archdemon at its head. It was then, when courage seemed to fail and all lost to death and despair, that the Grey Wardens came. They arrived with the beating of wings like mighty war drums and stood before the armies of men. The Grey Wardens, grim and fearless, marched forth, ever between men and the encroaching darkspawn. They formed a shield of their own bodies and held that line until the archdemon was dead and the last darkspawn lay trampled in the dirt. Then, demanding neither reward nor recognition for their sacrifice, the Grey Wardens departed. When the clouds rolled back and the sun shone full upon the blighted ground, the great kings knew that they had lost no men, that none of their blood had been spilled. This is a tale about no battle the Grey Wardens have fought, and yet about them all. They have always defended us from the darkspawn, taking losses so we do not have to. Adaptation of a Grey Warden legend. The tale outlined above is widely told, although subject to regional variations. Free marchers might substitute great kings for titles bestowed in their given city-states. In Fereldan, the implied army of wardens is sometimes replaced with two, representative of the national heroes who fought and defeated the archdemon at Denerim during the Fifth Blight. The beating of wings is a reference to the griffins the wardens are said to have ridden into battle. Although griffins went extinct long before the recent blight, they still appear in numerous stories, sometimes serving as a metaphor for the warden's unrestrained courage, but also employed to please an eager audience. From Tales of the Wardens by Sister Manon. The Qunari. The people of the Qun are, perhaps, the least understood group in Thedas. The Qunari Wars were brutal, but so was the Chantry Schism. So was the fall of the Imperium. Some of this misunderstanding is an accident of nature. The race we call Qunari are formidable. Nature has given them fierce horns and strange eyes, and the ignorant look on them and see monsters. Some is an accident of language. Few among the Qun's people speak the common tongue, and fewer speak it well. In a culture that strives for mastery, to have only a passable degree of skill is humiliating indeed, and so they often keep quiet among foreigners, out of shame. But much of it is a result of the culture itself. The Qunari view their whole society as a single creature, a living entity whose health and well-being are the responsibility of all. Each individual is only a tiny part of the whole, a drop of blood in its veins, important not for itself, but for what it is to the whole creature. Because of this, the Qunari most outsiders meet belong to the army, which the Qun regards as if it were the physical body, arms, legs, eyes, and ears. The things a creature needs in order to interact with the world. One cannot get to know a person solely by studying his hand or his foot, and so one cannot truly meet the Qunari until one has visited their cities. That is where their mind and soul dwell. In Seheron and Parvolin, one can truly see the Qunari in their entirety. There, the unification of the Qunari into a single being is most evident. Workers, whom the Qun calls the mind, produce everything the Qunari require. The soul, the priesthood, seeks a greater understanding of the self, the world, and exhorts the body and mind to continually strive for perfection. The body serves as the go-between for the mind and the soul in the world. Everyone and everything has a place decided by the Qun, in which they work for the good of the whole. It is a life of certainty, of equality, if not individuality. From the writings of the Seer of Kontar, 841 Blessed. History. Red, 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 red. The wrath of heaven. Those who oppose thee shall know the wrath of heaven. Field and forest shall burn, the seas shall rise and devour them, the wind shall tear their nations from the Those who oppose thee shall know the wrath of heaven. Field and forest shall burn, the seas shall rise and devour them, the wind shall tear their nations from the fact of the earth. Lightning shall rain down from the sky, they shall cry out to their false gods and find silence. The Canticle of Andraste, 7:19. Who was Andraste? This question has lingered in the ages since her death, not as easily answered as the faithful assume. Born an Alamari slave in the frontier realm of the Tevinter Imperium, now Fereldan, the chant says she is the bride of the Maker, that he told her in a vision of her role leading to the rebellion against the corrupt magisters. Is it true, or as some early Andrastian cults believed, did friendly spirits bestow this vision? We must remember that legends of Andraste were multitude in the years immediately following her execution, and beliefs we take for granted belong to the cult, victorious in suppressing all others. Indeed, even to suggest there was once disagreement was considered the direst heresy, until today, when we have lost even the memory of disagreement. All we know for certain is that Andraste inspired a world gripped by tyranny and chaos, that she helped spark a war which tore all of Thedas asunder, from questioning the chant by Magister Vibius Agorian. Or Vibius. Vibius. An unsigned letter in the Hinterlands. Preliminary digs have been more than successful. It's been extremely surprising to find such a high quantity of the product this close to the surface. If I didn't know better, I'd think it was growing. On one hand, this gives us an advantage. Without having to work with the old families back in Orzammar, or even take this through official guild channels, our families stand to make a killing. On the other hand, the proximity to the surface and the populated areas of Redcliffe raises an interesting challenge. The war between the mages and Templars should keep people out of the area for now, but as soon as the humans are done trying to kill each other, any operation we start will be uncovered. If we're going to take advantage of this opportunity, we need to keep people out of the area. I'd recommend manufacturing some bandits. This part of Fereldan is lousy with them, so they shouldn't attract much attention, and nobody will have trouble believing that bandits would stake out some territory. By the time anyone uncovers the operation, it'll be either tapped out, in which case we'll be gone, or we'll have the operation running smoothly, in which case we'll be wealthy enough to deny everything and throw some money at the throne by way of apology. Talk to the families and make it happen. This is too good to pass up. Construction order. Letter found in Redcliffe home. Misplaced notes. Patient observations. The Conversion of Hessarian. Beloved Andraste, sit well at the Maker's side and know my sorrow, for my heart was weak until it served your greater glory. As she was my enemy, I heeded the word of the betrayer, and so sentenced her to die. Thus she was bound upon the pyre, so that all might bear witness. But as the prophet burned, a silence fell, for though flame licked mortal flesh, she would not cry. The hearts of the people filled with shame, and all were silent with her. I thought it defiance, and, though I marveled at her strength, my heart was yet unmoved. It was then the prophet raised her eyes, her visage wreathed in sacred flame. It was then I saw her sorrow and her acceptance. I felt the flame eat mine own flesh. I felt its slow death upon me, and knew her suffering. Through flame I walked and drove the sword into her heart, and so the prophet was released. The Maker whispered in my ear, and I knew I had become the instrument of his will. An interpretation of the Conversion of Hessarian, written in 734 Storm, claims that it draws from a text written by Hessarian himself remain unconfirmed. Itch, 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 itch. Spirits and Demons. When I first summoned her, she was a rose, unwithering, unchanging, and unthorned, a spirit of the purest love one knows, who never hated, coveted, or scorned. The second time I drew her across the vale and shared a walk, a dance, a stolen kiss, with such a perfect beauty, pure and pale, no woman could compare, no man resist. And then in my weakness I essayed a third, Though magisters their warnings did impart, she broke my binding with a single word, and said this smiling as she clutched my heart, though love I was, your passion's changing fire has forged this spirit into cruel desire. Sonnet 126, The Lover and His Spirit, from A Chant for Dreamers by Magister Oratus. Oratius? Oratus? Oratius. I don't know. Read those. Read that. Read those. Okay. The Lost Art of Veilfire. Though it is an elven magic, I submit that Veilfire is worthy of consideration, for they perfected it at the height of their civilization. Certainly mages often use it as a source of light, for its flame burns without wood or oil. It can also activate dormant spells, which has its uses. Veilfire's true potential, however, is as a medium for writing. Veilfire runes convey more than the literal meaning of their text. Veilfire can transfer a tangible impression of sights, sounds, and even emotions on the reader. With diligent practice, any mage can learn this astonishing technique, but compared to the ancient elves' examples, current works are crude. I hope this book will guide those who, like myself, would rekindle an interest in this delicate art. Together let us rediscover subtleties lost to the ages. From Veilfire, a beginner's primer with numerous teachings, exercises, and applications, by Magister Pendictus. Only 2 maps. Map to a waterfall. Sketch of Calenhad's foothold. Places. Here we go. Lornan's Exile. Auril Tyrnon Gwerin's eldest son came late in the Earl's life, and there was much hope for the young man to follow in the footsteps of his successful father. Unfortunately, Lornan Gwerin proved to be profoundly lazy in his youth, more interested in spending his father's money than tending to his lands. In frustration, the Earl ordered a fort constructed in the mountains. He sent Lornan there, stating that his son could return to Redcliffe only when the bandits that lurked in the mountains had been brought to heel. Accepted history says that Lornan reformed, routed the bandits, and returned to Redcliffe a changed man. Whispers in the family, however, suggest that the man who returned to Redcliffe was in fact a soldier who bore some resemblance to Lornan, and who fought well against the bandits in the mountains, while Lornan rested comfortable in his mountain keep for the remainder of his days. Excerpt from Living Redcliffe by Sister Dorcas Gwerin. Miroir de la Mère, Reville's Folly. Miroir de la Mère was cut from Val-Royaux in 849 blessed. It was the will of a mad Emperor Reville, who demanded a reflecting pool large enough to draw his vain deceased mother back across the vale. Many shops and vendors were evicted to make room for his folly, and several memorials to the heroes of the first 4 blights were simply toppled. The reservoir supports little in the way of life, as the bottom was lined with lead to increase its reflective properties. Reville intended it for divination, using boats of massive planchettes, but work was not finished until the week of his own death. The waters see little use today save for lazy or fornication sojourns by the nobility aboard decorative gondolas. Excerpted and torn from a disposable walking tour of the capital by Philium, a bard. That was red. This was not. I don't believe. Wait a tick. Oh, nope, it was. I have my, My notes. Seheron. The goal is fear. The Qunari in Seheron's markets must fear that everyone who serves their food is a rebel looking for a chance to slip poison onto a Qunari's plate. The rebels must fear that every farmer they pass in the fields is a Ben-Hassrath spy, ready to bring soldiers running. And the commoners, the peasants, they must fear everyone. They see rebels light fires that kill Qunari and commoner alike. They see Ben-Hassrath arrest commoners who all know are innocent. When these events do not occur naturally, it is our duty to catalyze the process. Only when the commoners of Seheron fear the rebels and hate the Qunari will the Imperium be seen as the preferable option. The actions we take here may seem cruel, but to succeed we must agitate until all of Seheron hates both the rebels and the Qunari for their actions. Only when the people are broken can we save them. Only when they fear all others will they accept the aid of the Imperium. Any good soldier would kill 10 men to save 20. We must bring terror to Seheron so that we might one day bring peace. An excerpt from a training manual given to Tevinter operatives joining the Sicarii, whose existence has been officially denied. The Fellmire. The Forbidden Oasis. I met Bayard and Valframin. From here we will travel with the miners to the western approach. I already missed the sound of your voice, but the contract they offered will provide for us. And what is a year if I know you are waiting at the end of it? Bayard says the miners call the place the Forbidden Oasis. I feared perhaps the water was poisonous. You hear of such things. Or that the area was home to one of the beasts in Joachim's books. Bayard simply laughed and told me not to worry so much. When I asked how the oasis earned its dramatic name, Bayard replied, "Don't ask about the door." Excerpt from a letter written by Sol Didat to his wife Lynette, dated 938 Dragon. No further correspondence was sent. Resources found here: elfroot, spindleweed, blood lotus, dragonthorn, witherstalk, deep mushroom, serpentstone, and paragon's luster. The Orlesian Empire. There are many lords and ladies in Val-Royeaux, and I mean this literally. Once the system of noble titles in Orlais was labyrinthine. There are barons and baronets and baronets, and sub-barons, and a horde of others, each with its own origin and its own nuances of comparison. The Orlesian aristocracy is ancient and much given to competition. All the nobility play the grand game, as it is known, whether they wish to or not. It is a game of reputation and patronage, where moves are made with rumors and scandal is the chief weapon. No gentle game, this. More blood has been drawn as a result of the grand game than any war the Orlesians have fought. Of this I am assured by almost every gentleman here. As far as titles went, everything changed with the coming of Emperor Drakon, who established the Orlesian Empire as it exists now, and who created the Chantry. There is no more venerated figure in Orlais. In Val-Royeaux, the statue of Drakon stands as tall as the statue of Andraste. Drakon determined that the grand game was tearing Orlais apart, and so he abolished all titles besides his own, lord and lady. I am told, with some twittering amusement, that this action did not end the grand game as Drakon had intended. Now the lords and ladies collected unofficial titles rather than official ones, such as the exalted patron of Tassis Clay, or uncle to the champion of Tremes. It is a headache to remember such titles, and one winces to think of the poor doorman at the balls, who must rattle them off as each guest enters the room. The aristocracy is different from Fereldan in other ways as well. The Orlesians' right to rule stems directly from the Maker. There exists neither the concept of rule by merit, nor the slightest notion of rebellion. If one is not noble, one aspires to be. Or at the least aspires to be in the good graces of a noble, and is ever watching for a way to enter the patronage of those better placed in the grand game. And then there are the masks, and the cosmetics. I have not seen so much paint since the kennels at Highwayman, but that is another story. From Beyond the Frostbacks by Ban Tarek of Westhill, 920 Dragon. Tales. Nightingale's Eyes. Nightingale's eyes, what secret lies in their worth? Raven's tears they cry, but all the while they softly lie and spy on you. Nightingale's eyes, what will they find left behind? Craven master spy with heart remiss for those who could not find the truth. We're blinded, so we're hiding, dying to be. We're hiding from the fighting, longing to see. We're waiting for someone to speak and set us all free. Nightingale's eyes can free the ties on our hands. Craven master spies, can they find the key that can unlock the past? We're hiding from the fighting, longing to see. We're waiting for someone to speak and set us all free. Free. As performed by the bard Meriden Halewell. Once we were in our peace with our lives assured. Once we were not afraid of the dark. Once we sat in our kingdom with hope and pride. Once we ran through the fields with great strides. We held the fade and the demon's flight, so far from our children and from our lives. We held together the fragile sky to keep our way of life. Once we raised up our chalice in victory. Once we sat in the light of our dreams. Once we were in our homeland with the strength and Once we were in our homeland with strength and might. Once we were not afraid of the night. As performed by the bard Meriden Halewell. Now, it's not in my list, but I could have sworn that I read this. But it's not in either of my lists. I'll double check, and if it's been read, then it's fine. But if it hasn't been read, I'll read it in the next one. And the next Codex Entry readings. Oh! Bottles of Thetis. Butterbile, 784. A hard liquor that is not so much served as it is brandished. Coarse and indifferent, it is to your taste or it is not. The failing is yours if you cannot raise or lower to the challenge of a distiller told not to. Vint 9, Rowan's Rose. Delicate to the nose, comfort to the tongue, and strangely a half-remembered whisper to the ears. It is described as, and inspires, a wistful spirit, a Vinter's opus. Constellation Fervenial. Commonly referred to as the Oak. The constellation Fervanus is generally represented by a towering tree with leafless branches. Many scholars believe this is a representation of the nature that harkens back. Many scholars believe this is a representation of nature that harkens back to the lore of the early Niromenians, whose belief largely aligns with animism, prior to the rise of the old god worship and the creation of the Tevinter Imperium. Others, however, believe Fervanus was originally a constellation of the Elven people, specifically a depiction of Andruil, goddess of the hunt, Vir Tanadal, or Way of Three Trees. This is the central tenet of Andruil. Some think that Fervanus originally represented this concept. From a study of Theodosian astronomy by Sister Orin Petrarchius. Constellation Judix. Depicted as a downturned sword, the constellation Judix is oft called the Sword of Mercy in common parlance, even though the sword image was assigned to these stars long before Andraste's time. Judix referred to the concept of justice in ancient Tevinter, and the downturned aspect of the sword indicated a guilty verdict, which in those times generally translated to execution. Obviously, with its modern meaning in use as a symbol by the Templar Order, the old interpretation is frowned upon in scholarly circles. From a study of Theodosian astronomy by Sister Orin Petrarchus. My bad. Hard in Hightown, Chapter 2, by Varric Tethras. Magistrate Dunwald's butler had the air of a man who had never risen before dawn in his life. He stared down his nose at Donin Branakovic and his partner, Jevlin, as if he were on some lofty balcony above them instead of standing in the parlor in his dressing gown. The magistrate is indisposed. This can wait until a reasonable hour. He gestured for the guards to see themselves out. Magistrate is dead, Donin corrected him. Wake the household. As the butler left, Jevlin shifted uneasily in his new armor. Shouldn't the captain be here? You want to go back to the barracks? Be my guest, Donin said with a shrug, only half listening as he studied the collection displayed in the room. A dozen ancient swords lay nestled in display cases, protected from dust and prying fingers. He moved to lift the lid of the nearest one. Jevlin started to protest, but then the doors opened. She had eyes the color of topaz and dark hair that fell across her brow like sword strokes. She strolled into the parlor with such dignified elegance that Donin didn't realize for several minutes that she was clad in a housecoat and not a ball gown. You have news about my husband? What's Seamus done this time? Forget to pay his bill at the Rose? She seated herself and indicated the guards do the same. Donin nodded at the recruit to speak up. Jevlin startled. No, Lady Dunwald, actually... She interrupted him with a wave. Marielle, please. Lady Marielle, your husband has been murdered. Donin took over for the flustered recruit. When did you see him last? Marielle stared at him, her jewel-colored eyes wide, and her voice cracked on, Murdered? Seamus? But a heartbeat, maybe two, passed, and she again became the perfect picture of noble grace. I saw him at dinner, she answered in a tone anyone might use to comment on the weather. He left before dusk. He said he was going to play Wicked Grace with the Comte de Favre. Do you know of anyone who might have wanted him dead? Jevlin asked softly. People want magistrates dead on principle. She gave a wry smile, but her voice grew pained. Criminals, political rivals, even people in his district who disagreed with him. She drifted off, lost in thought, then turned to Donin, eyes blazing. A week ago, a letter came. Vague threats. I thought it was nothing, but it upset Seamus. Who sent it? Donin asked. It wasn't signed, but the seal was 6 crossed swords. We have to find Hard in Hightown Chapter 1, you guys. I have to know how this begins. How to Act Fereldan. My esteemed Lady Sidonia, I'd like to take full responsibility for Lady Marchalette's odd behavior of late. You see, we recently began the study of history. I thought that it would do the young mistress some good to be exposed to all Theodosian cultures, and not just Orlais. It was a foolish thought. Regrettably, your dear daughter has taken a particular interest in Fereldan folklore. She first developed an affinity for King Calenhad, which seems to have developed into a borderline of infatuation. She stared at me, eyes wide, when I told how he unified the barbarians with his allegedly incomparable might and charisma. Every time I tried to move the lesson on to something more important, she insisted I tell her again about Calenhad, how the Fereldans say his hair was twice as yellow as the sun, and his chin more chiseled than the tallest peak in the Frostbacks. Twice now I've had to tear down drawings she's tacked up in her bedroom of the man shirtless. Then we moved on to the werewolves, which was even worse. As you may already know, the Fereldans venerate the folk heroes Dane and Hafter. Dane was said to have been a werewolf, and Hafter to have descended from one. No enlightened man or woman would ever view such beast people with anything but revulsion. But you know Fereldans and their love of the wildlife. Unfortunately, these tales of the wolfmen set the little mistress's imagination afire. When she suggested we put on a play for you and her lord father, I could not say no. I'm afraid that's why Marshallette was running through the mansion wearing wet furs and frightening the chambermaids. She was rehearsing a scene in which Hafta drives back the Darkspawn. I've been informed that some priceless family heirlooms were destroyed amidst all that confusion, and I cannot fully express my dismay. I understand if my abject failure as a tutor results in my immediate dismissal. A letter from Brother Bernard to his former employer. La pomme vie est morte. The apples nearest the cafe are said to change their taste depending on whether one is walking toward or away from the gallows. And of course they do, for taste is subject to the whims of the heart, and no meal is favored after tears. But dare it anyway, for none know the taste of joy such as we who do not shy from experience. From Our Orlesian Heart by formerly Sister Laudine. Saga of Trita Brightaxe, Avvar-Mother. First stanza. Tell the tale of Trita Brightaxe, mountain maker, spirit's bride, free her people forged in fastness, made in mountains' hardy hide. Wise in wisdom, calm in counsel, great in gifts her grateful guests. Sacrificed did she to spirits, took their teachings, followed quests. Bright her axe unbreaking crystal, stirred to flame when temper flies, gifted from her leaf-eared lover, laughing lady of the skies. Bested blades of all who tried, maiden spurning all requests. Trita Brightaxe, dreamer's eyes, Avvar-Mother of her making. Second stanza. Thelm gold-handed, fingers greasy, jeweled rings with glitter shone, took in tribes in times of trouble, fed them fat to weaken bone. Warriors great and great in number, sun-kissed swords to fight his wars, drake-scaled shirts their bodies covered, heart-wine stained the salty shores. Told his tribes a tale of treasure, over sea to north it gleamed, whispered words to drive the droves to golden city where he dreamed. Counseled quick in dreams alone, voices wiser man ignores, pushed the tribes until they screamed, heed the dreams and crossed the waking. Third stanza. Honey-tongued was Thelm to Trita, gifts of gold and steel to start, wanted Trita's men for warriors, stolen tribe from stolen heart. Cold her tribe the gold hand counseled, leaned from winter's wind-knife chill, be my bride and cross the waking, eat the gilded city's fill. Trita Brightaxe, fraught with fury, crystal-axed had stirred to blaze, heeded well her leaf-eared lover, unabashed by lustful gaze. None shall break my tribe apart, not with demon words that kill. Fear my fury's fiery rays, dream words lie their thirst enslaking. Fourth stanza. Trita Brightaxe, Thelm gold-handed, battle brought with blade and axe, Thelm in mail and shield of silver, shining sheen to turn attacks, blade of dragon bone now blooded, warrior throats wrung raw with cheers. Trita stands, her bright axe blazing, leg still weeping battle tears. Bright the axe of leaf-eared lover, laughing lady of the skies, fire flares as Thelm gold-handed, honey-tongued, repeats his lies. North to warmth and golden cities, whispers speak in dreamers' ears, silver scorched the lyre flies on ravens' beaks to dreams unwaking. Seventh stanza. Trita Brightaxe, dwarf friend chieftain, with her leaf-eared lover lay, woke she did to love-sweat morning, lover gone in light of day. Dream words whispered, spoken soft, still the silence, crushed and crashing. Dead her tribe, unless a child could keep her line in warrior fashion. Avalvar, so named the lover called our journey, yours and mine. One day child of Trita's blood, Morganen in strength must shine. Lovers whispers to obey, Hendir dwarf prince friend in passion. Babe produced to serve the line, the Avvar tribe her name are taking. That was very difficult to read. She of the Highwayman Repents. Gallows master, hold thy hand, hold it back a while. Callous juror, let me stand, let me bear a smile. For comes my brother distance, for comes my saviour soon. I stand here most insistent, I will receive my boon. Fellow soldier, hold thy voice, hold it if you may. Fellow shoulders, show my choice, I am in your sway. For know my crime was cruel, and all my pain deserved. I stand here as a fool, despite my brother served. Mother dearest, look away, look into the sun. Others nearest, gone astray, you will be undone. For no more will I prattle, for no more will I prattle, and no more will I pray. Here you must the rattle, as life will fly away. From songs of old Orlais, she of the Highwayman Repents. Inscriptions collected by formerly Sister Laudine. Itchy. The avenue of her reflective thought. The avenue is inspirational, but wise travelers do not linger in their respects, not just because the bazaar awaits, but because the area before the back-turned statues is treacherous. Local legend has it that the child Empress Aimee abused the opportunity of religious repose to relieve herself beneath the gaze of Our Lady. Unable to discipline the toddling leader, her attendants instead chastised the statues and had them turned in supposed embarrassment. True or not, foolish youths dare each other to soil the spot in similar fashion, and a place of otherwise reverent thought always carries a faint odor about it. Excerpted and torn from a disposable walking tour of the capital by Philium, a bard. The children of Andraste. Okay. And the disciples of Andraste. The Folly of General Not-Sheritan. 3. But during times of crisis there can emerge abilities we do not know we possess. The servant under the greatest duress stood as Not-Sheritan. She stood and she spoke, she stood and she led, she stood and she attacked, and under banners they knew and a voice they did not, the forces of Orlais brought low their enemy. Now perhaps the servant was more lieutenant than page to her battle-hardened lord. And perhaps the strength of the foe is stressed too much in retellings, and perhaps the allied were well practiced in their roles. But none question that Not-Sheritan was at the least adequate and at the most inspirational. The head of Madame Snappy Snips, mascot of La Masque du Lion, named in jest but genuinely respected. The Grand Mame, as she is also called, was the last dragon brought down by Sir Konig, the previous owner of the cafe. A spirited hunter, Konig came of age in the years following the sighting that named the era. While others were quick to assume the tales of ancient Navarran dragon hunters must have been exaggerated, he tracked the gradual increase in dragon numbers and size. Konig believed we had yet to see a true return of the beasts of legend, and that the specimens of his day were young despite their ferocity. It is a cruel victory, but today we know Sir Konig to have been correct, even as he may have fallen to his own expertise. He was years overdue from his last hunt, and for the rest of us, travel-weary. Wary. What we thought to be the pinnacle of dragon strength may have been closer to adolescence. The sisters of Madame Snappy Snips may have left their sibling far behind. Excerpted and torn from a disposable walking tour of the capital by Philium, a bard. The Lovers Alcove. Every district has one, at least one, and the question must be, why is a place meant for dalliance declared in such an obvious way? The answer, of course, is that obviousness is the entirety of the point. When manners and station will not allow impassioned words, such corners are places to be seen, not being seen. Entering with a paramour is as much a declaration as singing out in joy, which one of good standing must never do. The alcove is thus a dignified means of announcing romantic affiliation, either for a genuine partnership or to appear as such in order to spare a suitor of refusal. Dignity, of course, requiring that one does not also make use of the darkness for actual physical gratification. This has, of course, never occurred. From our Orlesian Heart by formerly Sister Laudine. The Perils of Bard Life. As a bard, you are welcome anywhere in Orlais. Doors are opened with you... Bleh. As a bard, you are welcome anywhere in Orlais. Doors are opened to you with generous smiles, their wearers confident that no one would falsely pretend to such a title for fear of retribution. Your slightest request is immediately seen to. Your services are expensive and yet actively sought, and those who cannot afford them beg only to not have your displeasure turn their way. One day, however, you will awaken, you will realize the smiles are false, and behind them lies revenge. At the first moment of weakness, your brother and sister bards will be unleashed upon you like a pack of hounds, and you will realize that they are not your brothers and sisters at all. For all your fancy intrigue, you have spent your life creating nothing of worth. You have been swallowed by the web of your own deceits, and the game of which you believed yourself master, it moves on without you, uncaring. From a letter signed Sister Nightingale. The Randy Dowager Quarterly. A waterlogged quarterly missive of suspect virtue. The Randy Dowager welcomes the blooms of spring with the collected Calipigian cuirassiers, being a scandalous representation of Her Majesty's favoured, caught in flagrante delectable. Can their uniforms and modesty withstand the assault? The Randy Dowager, exhibitions for the noble of thought but spry of step. The lady herself says, hardly a Tethras, but generously arousing if polished cuirass does it for you, and it should. 3 scarves fluttered in shock out of 5. R.D. A well-worn quarterly missive of suspect virtue. The Randy Dowager welcomes the cool of autumn with the fall of another, the collected dreams of desire being the confessions of an apprentice, and training more furrowing than harrowing, forbidden dalliances at their most spirited. The Randy Dowager, exhibitions for the noble of thought but spry of step. The lady herself says, enchanting. One supports the circles, if only because closed doors offer the imagination more. 3 scarves fluttered in shock out of 5. R.D. An unread quarterly missive of suspect virtue. The Randy Dowager ignites winter's passions with the collected conscripted by love, being a tale of heroes come legends, the Grey Wardens, and their shining duty to claim those of promise who most suit their joining. The Randy Dowager, exhibitions for the noble of thought but spry of step. The lady herself says, always a classic when the Wardens come calling, or, dare one suggest, the reverse? 4 scarves fluttered in shock out of 5. R.D. An extra thick annual edition of the Suspect Quarterly. The Randy Dowager welcomes the new year by scandalizing the old with the collected romantic epic, The Horned Ones, being a tale of conquest, both of nation and of heart. Demands are satisfied as bronze giants share their explosive passions. The Randy Dowager, exhibitions for the noble of thought but spry of step. The lady herself says, only for those of particular taste. Delicate buds should remain in the garden while the bold of us flower. 5 scarves fluttered in shock out of 5. R.D. The Singing Maiden. What discipline achieves. We came first from the sea, the dreadnoughts took Parvolan at a stroke. We marched on the land called Seheron, then Ravane and the Tevinter Imperium. Our Vedathari told us the Tevinter capital of Menrathis was unassailable. Though it did not fall, its walls were cracked with steel and Bakun fire. Tevinter saw what discipline achieves. The Basque called us conquerors when we brought them purpose. When we Tamassrans teach a child to read or a wilderness is made fruitful, is that conquest? Without the certainty of the Qun, there can be no reason. The boss raised 3 retaliations against our forces, pushing back in Antiva and Ravane. The Kabathari, still adapting to the Qun's rule, suffered worst. The very people the Bass sought to liberate. The land burned while the Bass called us savages. With such madness and hypocrisy needed another answer. We signed the treaties of the Bass to silence them and left. We will return. Patience is the manifestation of self-control. While the Bass bicker amongst themselves, we prepare. What is time compared to the demands of the Qun? Tamassran teaching notes. Tamassran teaching notes, recovered and translated. And that is it. Goodness gracious, that was a lot. But that covers the previous 4 episodes of the LP, and probably a little more because I missed some somehow. But again, that's all for this time. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.